Zion had always thought of Misha as the best decision he'd ever made. Her laughter had once filled their apartment like music, and Rollo, their adopted golden retriever, had been a joyful addition that brought them even closer. He remembered the way she looked at him when they first brought the puppy home, like he was the only man in the world who understood her. But lately, something in her eyes had changed. They no longer lingered on him. They drifted, cold and distracted, toward her phone or the dog. It started slowly. Zion's long hours at work were necessary. Building a stable life wasn't easy.
But she stopped asking about his day.
Even when he brought home her favorite dessert or surprised her with a quiet evening in, she brushed him off, saying she was tired or Rollo was too restless. He told himself it was just a phase. But then came the long walks. Misha began insisting that Rollo needed more time outside. Morning, afternoon, and then unsettlingly late at night. She said it helped her clear her head, that Rollo was anxious and only she could calm him. Zion offered to walk Rollo together like before, but she always refused with a soft smile that felt hollow. She started dressing up for walks, lip gloss, fitted outfits. He found that strange. When he asked, she rolled her eyes and told him he was imagining things. But he wasn't. She spent more time talking to the dog than to him. Rollo became her confidant, her emotional outlet. She would whisper things into the dog's ear and glance over at Zion as if daring him to question her. The dog, once affectionate toward Zion, began acting differently. Distant, almost guarded. When Zion tried to pet him, Rollo would flinch or move toward Misha. It hurt more than he expected. Even their shared memories were being repurposed, rewritten without him. The connection they once shared as a family began to rot from the inside. He noticed her phone was always turned over when she set it down. She laughed softly at messages she wouldn't share. When he walked into a room, the brightness in her face dimmed, and she'd get up and leave with Rollo. One evening, he returned home early and found Misha on a video call in the kitchen, talking in a tone she hadn't used with him in months. She froze when she saw him. Said it was just a friend from the dog group. He didn't press, but his instincts started screaming. That night, he looked through her phone while she was in the shower, only to find she'd changed her passcode. That was new. The tension between them wasn't explosive, it was colder than that. A slow, deliberate freeze. And Rollo was always at the center of it. Misha had stopped sleeping next to Zion. She claimed Rollo needed space to stretch on the bed. Zion ended up on the couch. The couch became a place where he lay staring at the ceiling, wondering what was slipping through his fingers. The distance between them deepened with each passing day, but the most painful part was how natural it seemed for her. As though she had rehearsed this detachment. Her smiles were perfectly placed when guests came over. She still posted happy photos online, laughing selfies with Rollo in scenic parks, captions filled with affection. But Zion noticed things she couldn't hide, like the unfamiliar background in the pictures. The angle of her body turned towards someone just out of frame. A man's jacket reflected in the window of her car in one of the images. When he asked about it, she dismissed him, said it was probably a stranger walking by. Her tone was light, too light, like she didn't even take the lie seriously. That's what stung the most. Not just the deception, but the way she didn't even bother making it believable. Zion began noticing the grooming receipts. Rollo was being taken to the groomer more often than usual, and at odd hours. There were appointments scheduled when Zion was definitely home. He questioned her, but she said Rollo had skin issues, needed special care. Yet Rollo's fur was always clean, soft, immaculate. Too immaculate. It became clear that the dog wasn't just a pet anymore. He was a tool. A wall between them. A cover for something she didn't want to confess. When she started locking the bedroom door at night, claiming she needed privacy because Rollo was stressed, Zion didn't argue. He just stood outside the door, heart sinking, realization dawning. Whatever bond they had, whatever trust they'd built, had been quietly replaced by secrets. And the dog he once held in his arms as a symbol of their love now followed her like a loyal accomplice. Zion couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. He needed answers, not assumptions, not guesswork. The late-night walks, the secrecy, the guarded phone, the deflection, it all pointed to something deeper. He didn't want to become the kind of man who spied on his wife, but he had no choice. Quietly, he attached a GPS tracker to Rollo's collar. He justified it as protection, but deep down he knew the truth. He needed proof of what he already feared. The next few days were uneventful. Routine routes, short walks around the neighborhood. Then one night, the tracker pinged in an unfamiliar location, a vacant lot near the edge of town. At 11:42 p.m. Misha had told him she was just taking Rollo around the block. His chest tightened. The following night, he followed her. He parked a few blocks away and watched from a distance. She arrived dressed differently, more like a date night than a walk. Rollo barked excitedly, but she hushed him and looked around. Then a man appeared. Zion didn't recognize him. Tall, confident, casual. They greeted like it wasn't their first time. They kissed quickly, like they'd done it often. Misha tied Rollo near a tree, barely glancing back, then leaned into the man like they'd met there 100 times. Zion stood frozen. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was choreographed.
Practiced.
The walks, the grooming, the bedtime routines, they weren't about the dog. They were about hiding a double life. Over the next week, Zion pieced it all together. She'd been seeing Blake, the man from that night, for months. During work hours, during supposed vet appointments, even when Zion was in the next room. Blake had come to their home under the pretense of being a dog trainer. Misha had planned it meticulously, using Rollo as the perfect alibi. Every odd behavior now made sense. The increased grooming visits were to mask the scent. The long walks were secret meetups. Even the shift in Rollo's behavior was manipulated. She trained the dog to respond differently to Zion, isolating him emotionally while maintaining the facade of a perfect pet parent. When Zion confronted her, she didn't deny it. She just stared at him, calm and detached, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Her response was icy. She blamed him, said he'd been emotionally unavailable, that she felt lonely, unwanted. She didn't even try to apologize. Instead, she said Rollo understood her pain better than Zion ever could. She insisted the dog knew she needed comfort, and Blake gave her that through companionship. The absurdity of it made Zion feel like he was losing his mind. His wife had not only replaced him emotionally, she had convinced herself that the dog validated her betrayal. After the confrontation, Misha doubled down. She refused to let Zion walk or feed Rollo. She said the dog was anxious around him now that he sensed the tension. Rollo, once affectionate and playful with Zion, avoided him completely. When he tried to pet him, Rollo growled softly and backed away. It felt rehearsed. Misha even began correcting Zion in front of the dog, treating him like a misbehaving child, saying things like, "Don't raise your voice, you're scaring Rollo." It was manipulation so subtle, yet so precise that Zion found himself questioning his own actions, his tone, his sanity. Her gaslighting became relentless. She'd cry and then laugh within minutes. Accuse him of paranoia. Say he was imagining things. Then she'd lock herself in the room with Rollo and blast music, making Zion feel like an outsider in his own home. The space that once felt shared now belonged to her and the dog. She started taking selfies with Rollo, calling him her emotional anchor online. Her captions dripped with irony, words like loyalty, faith, and unconditional love, while cheating behind closed doors. People praised her devotion to her pet, unaware she was masking betrayal behind fur and filters. Zion spiraled. He started avoiding home altogether, lingering at work just to breathe. But when he returned, the atmosphere was colder. Rollo barked at his footsteps. Misha began locking the dog's collar in a drawer when she was home, claiming it made Rollo anxious. It was a lie to prevent Zion from checking the tracker again. He saw through it but didn't fight. He was tired, emotionally stripped. Eventually, he gave her an ultimatum: end the affair or lose everything. She laughed. Not cruelly, but casually, as if the choice wasn't even difficult. She told him Blake was already gone, that it wasn't about him anymore, that she didn't need a man, just Rollo. She said the dog gave her more peace than any human ever had. And then she said the line that would haunt him. "You and I were a mistake. But Rollo, he saved me. He knows who really cares.
Zion didn't speak.
There was nothing left to say. The betrayal was done. The damage was irreparable. His wife had cheated, yes, but worse, she had weaponized the one creature they both loved to justify it. The emotional cruelty was far deeper than he imagined. And the worst part? She didn't even feel sorry. Zion moved out without saying goodbye. There was nothing left to salvage. He packed his things while she was out with Rollo, leaving only a brief note on the kitchen counter, not for her, but for the dog. It said, "Be good, buddy. I hope one day you remember how much I loved you." He didn't expect her to care. She'd made her choices. He wasn't angry anymore, just numb. The home he once filled with effort had become unrecognizable. Silence, once peaceful, had turned oppressive. And what haunted him most wasn't the infidelity. It was the realization that she never once considered what her betrayal had done to him. Not once did she flinch at his pain. He filed for divorce. There was no argument about money, no debate over property. But when it came to Rollo, everything changed. Misha demanded full custody of the dog. She didn't ask, she insisted. Claimed he was her therapy companion, her emotional support. That she couldn't function without him. In court, she played her role perfectly. Soft-spoken, fragile, painting a picture of Zion as distant and cold. Zion didn't fight her. He watched her win over the room with practiced sincerity. When the judge awarded her full custody of Rollo, Zion didn't contest it. He just stood up, nodded, and walked out. Sometimes surrender is the only way to reclaim peace. Healing wasn't immediate. There were nights he couldn't sleep, mornings he didn't want to rise. Therapy helped him name what he'd gone through. Emotional manipulation, betrayal layered under affection, trust fractured not just by actions, but by pretense. He began to see things clearly.
He wasn't weak.
He was loyal in a world that confused loyalty with naivety. And slowly, he built a life away from the ruins. No Misha. No Rollo. No lingering questions. Just forward motion. But the past has a way of echoing. Months later, a friend sent him a photo from Misha's social feed. She was sitting on a restaurant patio, sipping wine, Rollo beside her in a buttoned shirt and bow tie. The caption read, "The only man who never hurt me." There were more posts like it. Rollo at candlelit dinners. Rollo tucked under blankets beside open novels. She wasn't just treating him like a pet, she was presenting him as a partner. The tone wasn't humorous. It was unsettling. Romantic captions, anniversary jokes, long tributes about how he'd stayed through everything. Some people laughed in the comments. Others called it sweet. Zion felt a cold knot form in his stomach.